I
Yeah.
am high routine person. I love
Yeah.
routine. I love my rut. I'm happiest there. When I have to get out of my
And I
rut,
could
I'm very
not be
cranky.
different. If y'all didn't know, Sarah and I could not be more different.
But the funny thing is, I don't write every book the same way. Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. I'm Sarah Rosette.
And I'm Jamie Albright. And this week on the show,
we are answering your questions.
Yes, we are.
Yes.
So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So how are you this week?
I'm good. It's been an interesting week. Yeah, it's been good. It's been a good week. Can't really talk about anything right now, but it is. Yeah, it's been a good.
You may have news later.
I may have news later. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but yeah, it's been a good week, and some answers to some things that I've been wondering about have happened, and yeah,
that's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, for me, I'm kind of getting back in the routine after being gone.
Yeah.
And so I did some writing. I'll talk a little bit more about that later when we do the questions and stuff. I'm also doing a lot of fixing things, changing things up, things that I've had on my list for a while that need to be done, just little things. So that just seems to take me forever, but plowing through that, and found out today, I did not know this, but I was doing an update in English Spark, and they have a list and you can see where your books are ranking, which,
oh my gosh,
I didn't know that. Like you can go look and see each individual book. It'll tell you what its rank is in its category.
Oh, cool.
And so I had the Pyramids release, and so the paperback is doing really well.
That's awesome. Before we get too far into much of anything, I do want to say that I sort of took the summer off of a lot of things, but I'm ready, especially consulting, but I'm ready to get back into consulting. So if anyone has any consulting needs like branding or just evaluating your product page or talking about a release or how to get more eyes on your book or newsletter building or anything like that, let me know. We can set something up. I've struggled with this a little bit in that I'm not releasing, I'm not, really doing a whole lot. And so I felt a little bit like an imposter advertising my services. But the bottom line is, and I say this in all humility, I know what to do. I may not be doing it right now, but I know what to do. And I've had success, and I can have success again.
You've helped a lot of people.
I have. So
yes,
if it's something you're interested in, if it's something you're needing, I'm not pressuring anybody at all, but I'm available. If there's other people or I'm not your girl, I'm more than happy to help you find someone who might be a better fit for you. So, I just want to see people succeed, and I do love it. It takes less energy for me than writing, but it does take some energy. And so because of that, I sort of took some time off. Plus, I really needed to deal with my inferiority thing.
Remember, imposters don't get imposter syndrome.
That's true. But yeah. So anyway, just putting that out there. You can contact me on my website and I'll get you the information. So yeah.
Okay.
And let me know you listen to the podcast because you get a discount.
All right. Well, we don't have any new supporters, but thanks to all our continuing supporters, we really appreciate it.
Yes.
And if you want to support the podcast, if you've received value from the podcast and want to support us, that would be wonderful. And when you do, you get access to those previous supporter episodes in the Slack group. Writing sprints are on hold because we just have a whole bunch going on right now.
And a lot of travel right now.
I think we might forget to log in, and it would be very disappointing. So we've got that on hold.
Yeah. And another thing I was going to say is that, there are just some people that can't support, and that's totally fine. We understand that. But one way you can, if you gotten value from the podcast, one way you can support is to leave us a review on Apple. We don't really ask for reviews very often, but they are important. And if you have gotten value from the podcast and you haven't left us a review, we would love that. That would be so awesome because it just helps Apple know who
who to share it with,
who to share it with, all of the stuff. So we would love that. If you have a few minutes to leave a quick review, good, bad, or otherwise. I mean, honestly, we want reviews. So there you go.
Yeah, we would appreciate it. So before we get to the questions, should we talk a little bit more about the Better, Faster Con? Did you have any big takeaways or anything that surprised you?
Yeah, because it wasn't just, it was strengths, but it was also the Enneagram. And, I've known Claire forever and have taken this Enneagram test. And for years, I thought that I was a 2. And turns out I'm not, because I'm going to her retreat next week. So I had to take a more in-depth test, and I'm a 7. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm broken. Like, what is wrong with me? But when we got to Becca's thing, Claire put us together with other people that are
the same number. Yeah.
Same number. And one of the questions was, what is the hardest thing that you do? You in your author life, what is the hardest thing for you to do? And I said, I was the first one to go, shocking. I said, put words on a page. And everyone else, all the other 7s went, yes, that is the hardest thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, like
you have found your people.
I have found my people. I was saying that because I just felt like if I was going to be there, I needed to be honest, because I'm there. I mean, we were there because Becca asked us, and we did a panel. But honestly, I wanted, I'm in my discovery era. I'm trying to figure out what's going on with me. And I just was going to be honest. And I've never really been like, of all the things we do, putting words on the page is the hardest. Like, it's made me wonder, should I even be doing this? And so to be around people like that feel the same way, that are successful. These are not just people just starting. These are successful people. For them to say the same thing, it just made me think, I am not broken. I am not broken. And I know, you were like, you're not broken. But the fact is, I have felt broken.
But you can't change how you feel, right?
No.
If you feel it, that's how you feel.
And I have felt it deeply, that I am broken, and maybe I should not be doing what I'm wanting to do. But the fact is, that is not the truth. And then in combination with my strengths, there are things like, there's this kind of mindset of, stay in your lane, right? And I've said it, like, y'all know I've said, stay in your lane, pick a lane.
There's a reason.
Right. And so when since May, I've started and stopped several things, just big ideas. And I wrote, 10 to 20,000 words on them and then stopped them. And it's made me feel like a flake. Like, I can't finish anything. Like, I'm just, I just start and I stopped and I'm so inconsistent, blah, blah, all the negative thinking, Turns out I do have like a little one, not wing, but some one tendencies, which ones can be really critical of themselves. And that shows up for me, I think. And anyway, but with my strength of activator, number 1 activator, and all my relationship strengths, getting those things, putting those things on a page is good. It can be good. I can put that on a page, go to something else, come back to that later, and it may be a viable idea.
Yeah.
But I won't know that unless I put it out on a page or talk it out. And I usually don't talk it out unless I'm putting it on a page. So for me, because I'm number 3 communication too. So for me, it was just that I am not broken, and that while my relationship strengths do make it hard to execute at times, it is not something I cannot overcome, and I can't, and they can work for me. So that was it.
That was a good moment when you began to see things differently.
Yeah.
For me, it was, I had always just focused on my top 5 because that's pretty much where all your main strengths are.
Yeah.
But we talked a little bit more about our top 10 and we talked
Yeah.
about our bottom strength.
Yes.
And I was like, I don't even know what mine is. I had to go look it up. It's command, which is just so shocking that that's my lowest one. Not shocking at all.
Mine is deliberation. If anyone is surprised, you haven't been listening very long. So yeah.
But I learned a lot about the rest of my strengths that I just pretty much had ignored. And one of them is connectedness. And we broke up into small groups and did a round table on connectedness. And I was like, honestly, I don't know anything about connectedness. So I learned about connectedness. Mm-hmm. Now that I've learned about it, I'm seeing it in things that I do, things that I say,
right,
that I did not realize, in context as well, things that I didn't realize I was doing. So I think that's the first step, is you have a strength and then you start seeing it. So I'm learning about those things.
Yeah.
The other thing we talked about was balconies a lot, like how to get into a balcony and how to really excel in what you're really strong at. And so my number one is intellection. And Becca had us do this thing where we pictured being in the top balcony. Yeah. And I was just like flummoxed. I couldn't think of anything. So we talked about it more. Becca came over and chatted with us. And basically, and we did mention certainty. That's a thing with intellection, is we like certainty. We like to know that this is the way to go. And sometimes we think about things way longer than we need to because we're not certain. So she suggested that I go ahead and start trying things, even when I'm not certain. Do you need, like she always says, do you need to be at a 7 on a scale of 1 to 10? Do you need to be at a 7 to go ahead and start? Right. Maybe you start when you feel like you're at a 4 or a 5 and just see how that feels. Yeah. So this week I tried that, and I'm working on this project. It's not going to come out for a long time, but I was like, okay, I will just try this. I know the beginning, and I'll just put some words down and I'll go ahead and start, even though I don't have all the details worked out and everything. Yeah. And it felt a little bit like walking on a tightrope with no net. But I did it and it worked out fine. And I was like, okay, this is what I need to do. I need to push into this a little bit more. Yeah. So that was interesting. Yeah. And I'm glad I tried it. And I probably will keep doing it. Maybe not at like a 2 level, but I will find my sweet spot.
Yeah. So you will. Yeah. So I think that's great. I think that it was just so good. Another thing, like adaptability is in my top 10. And I didn't really think about it. Honestly, I thought adaptability was you just kind of, if people change plans.
You could roll with the punches or something.
Roll with the punches, roll with the flow, which is sort of true. But adaptability too is that things become routine really fast. And that's probably why I've never written one book the same way, ever. Like, never. I've never written a book the same way. Like, there's some people, I do this and then I do this and then I do this. Not me. I do this and then I'm like, because that's what worked last time. Well, I don't want to do it like that. I want to do it a different way. Or like why I've never been able to do a diet more than once. Because it worked once, but I can't do it.
Why try it again, right?
Yeah. And it's so counterintuitive. It just doesn't sound right. But interestingly enough, several of us, if not all of us, there were only 4 7s, but I think we all had adaptability in our top 10, or at least three of us did. Which 7 is the enthusiast. We love to get excited. We love a new project. We love to, we just want to be. We're enthusiastic about things, and so it just reaffirmed I am not broken. I'm just the way I am. But I can,
and that's okay.
Yes, and I can still do this job. Yeah.
Yes.
So anyway, it was good. It was good. I really walked away thinking, being really excited for Claire's thing next week, her retreat, and then also just that it's going to be okay.
Yeah,
it's going to be okay,
and that's a good thing. Yes,
it's going to be okay, and I really am at there. Of course, y'all, I'm still going to keep therapy, so that could be helping. I mean, I'm sure that's helping too. Kind of worked through something yesterday that was just such a revelation. And I mean, it's not that big a deal, but because intellectually I know what we talked about was true, but it's like the second grader in me did not know that was true. And I was like, I had to mesh the two things together. And I walked out of there thinking, wow, this all just kind of goes together with what's been happening. And it's going to be okay. Whatever it is, it's going to be okay. So I want to give you that because you guys know the struggle I've had and how bad I've been and how far down I've been. And if I can encourage you, I want to encourage you. So yeah, there you go.
I think that's perfect. And we'll wrap that up and move on to the questions.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I can add anything to that.
Yeah.
I agree.
Thank you.
All right. So these questions are from Belinda Kroll.
Yes.
Thank you for the questions, Belinda. They're really fun.
They are.
The first one is how do you write your first draft? So this kind of goes along with what we were just talking about, by hand, in a notebook, on your phone. Do you ever print out copies for editing or when you've gotten lost in the story? So I'll go first because I think this is really interesting because I am a high routine person. I love routine. I love my rut. I'm happiest there. When I have to get out of my rut, I'm very cranky.
If y'all didn't know, Sarah and I could not be more different.
But the funny thing is, I don't write every book the same way.
Oh,
and so when I started writing, I used to print everything out early on. I would draft on the computer, type it, then print it out and edit. And I think we talk about this later, but so I would do it that way. Now I use dictation, and it's been a while since I've done a draft. I feel like it's been months. It really probably hasn't been that long, but it feels long. But I use dictation now. So that's changed. And then when I edit the dictation, I edit on the computer.
Yeah.
And I hardly print anything out at all.
Yeah.
But and if I get lost in a story, sometimes I just have to go back and start at the beginning and read it through again. That's how I kind of figure it out. But for my first draft, like sometimes I've done Pinterest boards where I put images. Sometimes I used to like take a big sheet of butcher paper and I would plot out the story like visually, like it would have the arc and the highs and the lows, just little notes. Yeah, I've done all kinds of different things. And I think it just depends on what the book is and how I'm feeling. And sometimes I hear somebody say, oh, I did it this way. And I think, I'll try that.
Yeah.
And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Mostly I start with the idea and I somehow get down like the first quarter of the book. And I know like the main plot points after that. And if I have that, but I just have it in all these different formats. Sometimes it's images, sometimes it's words, sometimes it's mind maps. I use those a lot. I'll put the person who's the victim in the middle of the page. I'll put their name, and then I'll have all these arrows and things around it about these are all the suspects and these are how they're connected and these are their motives. And then once I have that, I can get started.
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting.
So it's my one place where I have no routine.
Right.
What about you? What do you do?
Who knows? I do a little of everything. In the beginning, I did write out by hand, like the first book. There's somewhere around this house, there is a copy of the first, I don't know, fourth of the book written in hand. It's nothing, probably doesn't even vaguely resemble the final book, but I did get started that way. But I have pretty bad carpal tunnel when I write by hand, and so I can't do that. Mostly, I just write. I write the first draft, and then but things change for me a lot. I was talking about this with my therapist yesterday because we were trying to come up with some ways that I could not get stuck because I do get stuck, But things change so much for me in that first really quarter of the book that sometimes that's hard. But what I do is if I come up with another idea or it's changed or something, or motivations have changed or whatever, or if I have that epiphany, oh, this is why he is the way he is, I will put in red at the beginning of the chapter, from this point forward, this is where we're going, so that when I go back, I know to from there backwards, I got to go fix things and then I can go forward and know,
And that keeps you moving forward.
Yeah, it keeps me moving forward. There's only usually a couple of times that happens, and it's usually not huge things. There may be one kind of big thing, but that's easy, to fix. But yeah, so that's generally how I do it. I have written the first 20,000, 15 to 20,000 words. I always get stuck at that around 20,000 word point and go, oh shoot, I don't have a story. But I have written that part and then jumped to the midpoint because I knew what was going to happen in the midpoint and wrote from the midpoint to the end, then gone back and filled in. And that actually did make the fun and games part of the book, I think, better and easier to write because I knew what was going to happen.
Let me add that the very first time I sat down to write my first book, I did handwrite in the beginning. Yeah. And I can't remember if I did the whole book that way and then typed it up or if I only did a portion of it. But I do remember getting to a point where I was like, this is just too slow. I thought I need to figure out how to think and type at the same time instead of think and write. And I made myself sit down at the keyboard and it felt so slow. I felt awkward and slow, but I made myself do it so I could do it faster, so I could get words down faster because just having to retype it was taking so much time. And then I hit the same point with dictation where I was like, I'm going to learn to do this and I'm going to make myself do it until it doesn't, it still feels awkward for me to speak my words in to my phone instead of typing them. But it just shows you can transition from one way of doing something to another. But some people really love handwriting their first draft because it's a slower process. Some people really love it. So I wouldn't say, you have to transition away from that if you're doing that.
Correct.
All right. Well, do you ever use the dreaded red pen for editing? Belinda says, I revel in the red myself. She loves the red.
It would look like a crime scene if I did. Y'all know my grammar issues. It already does coming back from the
copy editor.
Yeah, the copy editor, but no.
I don't tend to use red. I like purple. I like pink. I like green. But that was more when I would print things out to edit. And now I pretty much edit on the computer.
Me too. Yeah.
I used to print everything, every draft out, and now I don't. But I feel like I've gotten better at figuring out what needs to be changed because I do remember in those first books, I would have huge chunks that I would think, oh, this doesn't go here. And I'd have to move them. And I had all these arrows and stars, go star to page 27, insert this at star, and it was so complicated. And I don't do that. I don't move things around anymore. So I don't know if I'm just better at figuring out what needs to go where, maybe.
Yeah, you are. I'm sure that's it. Yeah, the first books, I did have like sections where I would move around and everything, but I don't do that anymore. No red pen for me. There's not enough red pen in the world. I don't know. So what is your favorite beverage, alcoholic or non? And is there a story that goes with it? You go first.
My favorite beverage is right here beside me. It's a Diet Coke. It is caffeine, and I love it. It's one of my major vices.
Yes.
No story behind it. Just that's what I like.
Yes, I do too. It's not my favorite. I'll tell you my favorite, but it's very close second. I will tell you, I love the burn. In fact, I saw a TikTok yesterday that was like, it was a guy and he was like, here's my commercial audition for Diet Coke, the beverage of white women and gay men. And oh my gosh, it was so funny. And I was like 1,000%. Mine is coffee, but I only drink it in the morning. I rarely drink coffee after 10 o'clock because coffee is just very dear to me. I drank my first cup of coffee when I was 3 years old with coffee, milk, and sugar with my grandfather. I still remember.
And who would not like that?
Exactly. And I drank coffee every morning there's nothing wrong with me. Every morning since then, pretty much. At 11, I remember deciding I was too old to be drinking coffee and milk, so I just went coffee and sugar. But then I pretty quickly, well, not pretty quickly, I guess when I was in college, switched to, like artificial sweeteners. So yeah, I drink coffee. And then also coffee is just like I have memories of my mom, my grandmother and my aunts and my mom sitting around drinking coffee. My sister.
It's a very social thing, right?
Yes.
Have a cup of coffee.
My mom and I sit around, even my dad, which, I don't have a ton of memories of my dad, even though my dad's still around, but sitting with us and doing a whole lot. But we would sit and drink coffee. My sister who passed away, that was one of her favorite things. In fact, when she was on hospice and, she was blind, so she never really knew what time it was or anything. She would wake up sometimes at 2 a.m. and want coffee because she thought it was morning. And so, and man, we'd made that coffee. Are you kidding? We absolutely gave her coffee. So it's just very tied to family for me and really good memories, really safe and warm.
Yeah.
I just have warm, fuzzy feelings when I think about coffee.
And that's a great example of how you can take something in it. Like you could incorporate something like that into a book.
Absolutely.
That gives you that feeling.
Yeah.
And it's, it's just a cup of coffee, but it's not. Yeah. It's more than that.
Right. Yeah. It's more than that. It's social. It's, some of the happiest times we've been drinking coffee, some of the saddest times we've been drinking coffee, some of the most boring, mundane times we've been drinking coffee. It's just very tied to my family. And I hadn't thought about that until I saw this question. And so, because really and truly, I would probably have said Diet Coke had I not thought more about that. But if I had to pick between the two, I'm going to pick a cup of coffee. Yeah.
Nice.
In the mornings, not after.
Only in the morning. Have you ever read a book that made you sit up and say, that's my relationship? And if it was, what was the book and why did you feel that way? So this was a hard question. Oh, I guess.
It was a hard question. It was a hard question. But I do have one. Pride and Prejudice would probably, I mean, in thinking about how my relationship with my husband started, yeah, it's Pride and Prejudice for sure. For sure. We did not get along when we first met. Not at all. Not at all. But we were oddly attracted to each other, but we did not.
That's funny.
How about you?
So for me, I would take this as like, what type of books appeal to you? What type of relationships in books appeal to you? And I don't have like a specific, I mean, I do. I have books I think of, but what they all have in common is they have, usually it's the two people aren't together. They're kind of in this bantering relationship and there's banter going on. And sometimes there's reasons they can't be together, or they're like, one series is about a man who is a author and his agent doesn't know who he really is. And so there's a barrier. Do you tell and risk the relationship or not? So it's kind of the friends to lovers thing, but there's a barrier there. But I kind of like those. It's more banter and more action, because I want more than just the romance. So it has to be like a mystery or something also included. I don't know that I've read a book and I thought, oh man, that is me exactly. That was our story. I can't think of anything.
That wasn't exactly our story. He wasn't crazy rich, and I mean, I was poor, but I mean, and I do have a lot of sisters, but that is true. Yeah. But it was just, like the first, we had an 8 a.m. class, and it was a class that was my minor, which was nutrition. And so there were only like 12 people in the class, and all 11 of them knew each other because they were going through the registered dietitian program. And so they had just come through this kind of really intensive thing where they had to work a lot of hours at the hospital and everything. So they all knew each other really, really well. And I was the outsider because I was the only one wasn't part of the major. And so it was an 8 a.m. class. And after, a week or so, you get to know people's names. So I walked in one morning and I was like, good morning, Carol. Good morning, Stacy. Good morning. There were only 2 guys in the class also, good morning, good morning. And I turned to Chris and I said, good morning, Chris. And the first thing he said was, what's your problem? And I was like, oh, it will be a cold day and where before I speak to you again. But then his best friend, Bill, was in there, and Bill and I became very good friends, and we were actually pretty silly, and that really just irked Chris. And so, yeah, it wasn't until
So yes, this is very much like Pride and
It
Prejudice.
is, and it wasn't until I realized I was 2 years older than Chris, because he just really intimidated me, but that I was 2 years older than him, which was almost half the semester, that I was like, well, I am not going to be intimidated by someone 2 years younger than me. Are you crazy? That things change,
And then he refused to dance with you, and the rest is history.
If you only knew. If you only knew. Yeah. So, yeah, it is
that's
a little
funny.
bit like it. A little bit like it.
All right. Well, what, if any, writing supplies do you bring with you when you travel? Do you write when you travel? I guess is the first question.
Sometimes I do. And I bring my computer. I always bring my computer. I just always have it. And my phone. I have written on my phone before, which I don't prefer, but I can do it.
Can.
Like Kirsten Oliphant or Emma St. Clair. She writes almost exclusively on her phone. Like when she's working out, she's doing the Stairmaster and she's writing on her phone. I mean, I'm just in awe of people like that. But yeah, I don't really do that. But yeah, that's about it for me. What about you?
I always have big plans to write when I travel. So I always take my computer with me and I always have a notebook or something. But I have written on trips before, but usually I end up being very unproductive. I have written in airports, waiting. I do have a memory of being in an airport and writing the last book of the On the Run series. And I was like, oh, this is kind of appropriate. I'm traveling, writing about travel mystery.
Yeah.
But I prefer not to because it's really hard for me to block out everything. And even if I'm in a hotel room, it's just hard for me. So I always have big plans. I'm going to write that chapter. Revision is easier for me to do on the road. If I have something I'm revising, I can do that so much easier.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm learning probably not a good plan to get 5 chapters written on a trip.
Yeah, no.
That would never happen.
No. I mean, yeah, and it cracks me up that people talk about going to hotel rooms and, getting stuff done. And, I end up napping when I
would be checking out like what's in the little refrigerator. What's room service? Can I order room service?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've gone to the beach because, my friend Leslie has a house there that she lets me use sometime. And I've done that a few times. In fact, Sweet Talker would probably never have gotten finished if I hadn't gone there. But I was there for 4 days. And then Chris came for a couple of days. And this is no lie, the first day and a half, I did nothing but sleep. I just slept. And then once I kind of got caught up on sleep, because, you're at the beach and it's quiet and somebody else is home, I mean, you're just not. And then after that, I got stuff done. But it was like I had to take a little while just to nap.
Recalibrate, readjust. Restore that energy. Yeah.
Well, I have a question for you. Do you keep a notebook by your bed, like for ideas and stuff?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Me either. I just don't. I don't. I'd like to know if our listeners do. That would be a good question if y'all do that. And
yeah. When you have a story idea, do you jot it down? Sometimes I will. I don't ever do this at night, but if I think of something during the day, sometimes I'll put it in like my notes app on my phone.
Yeah.
Just so I have it later. But many times I think of things and I don't write them down. And then later I think, that was a really good plot twist. What was it?
What was
And
it?
it usually will come to me, but it takes a long time. So it'd be much more efficient just to write it down.
Well, I was looking for something in my notes app the other day, and I came across all these ideas that I had written down at some point. I don't even remember writing them down. I never went back and looked at them. Some of them were good ideas. I never even went back and looked at them. So
I'm looking right now because I do remember I wrote down in my notes app, I put down what I was thinking for suspects for one book.
Yeah.
And I went back and looked at it later. I'm not going to be able to find it right now, but I went back and looked at it. It was pretty close to what the actual book came out to be. I was like, oh, that actually worked. Maybe I should do that.
That is really good. Well, have you thought of anything else about the question we got last week about affording
how to save money?
Yeah, how to save money or do this on more of a budget. We talked about like side jobs, side hustles, waiting, bartering with other people, using kind of heavy beta readers, that if you know any.
Yeah, I think those are all good. And I haven't thought of anything new. And I don't think we asked if anybody had any ideas, but we're recording this pretty soon after the episode came out.
Yeah.
So we don't have any replies. If you do have any ideas on that, let us know how you saved money. And I mean, you can say, like I think you mentioned with covers and stuff, if you choose
pre-made covers,
a pre-made cover that you can use again and again, like if you're doing a series, you can maybe just change the color of the background.
I've seen people do that, and I've seen actually bigger name authors do that when they're like trying stuff out, you know. So,
and the other thing I learned when I did the Kickstarter is, I'm sure this could apply to covers. You could say, this is my budget. What can you do with this budget?
Yeah. Like, don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask. Most of our interactions are on email anyway. So, like, it may be embarrassing to ask and then have them say no, but nobody's going to see that doing it over email. So don't be afraid to ask. And if they say no,
that's something I didn't realize was that you can, and with copy editing, same thing. You could say, here's my budget. This is what I can afford.
Yeah.
Can you work with me on this?
Yeah.
Can I pay in installments?
Right.
You know, something like that.
Yeah.
And they may say, well, I can't do it, but there's somebody who's getting started and they're a good copy editor. Let me refer you to them, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So anyway, just some ideas, and because I just don't want cost to be a reason why people don't do this. But on the other hand, I don't want cost to be the reason that you put out a product.
Something that you're not happy with later.
Yeah,
that you regret. Because we've talked to so many people who did not take the time and invest what they wanted. Then they looked back and oftentimes pulled it down or redid certain things. And so you can just save yourself some time and heartache later down the road.
Yeah. I think that's all our questions. I do want to say congratulations, Elana Johnson. I saw yesterday on Facebook that she sold one of her series to Sony Pictures. So they're going to make, I don't know if it's movies or series out of them, but super happy
exciting
for her. Yeah. Yeah. Well deserved.
I'll find her interview and put it in. That was one of our early interviews.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was during
COVID. It had to be during COVID.
Was it during COVID? It was during COVID, and it was when we lost power at some point because we did the interview. I did it in my car in front of Starbucks that was closed, but their internet was still working.
Thank the Lord.
It wasn't closed. I think they were still open for the drive-through, but yeah.
One of two car interviews that we've done. You did one, I did one.
Actually,
and we had to redo mine.
I've done a couple because we didn't have any power here. We didn't have any internet. I can't remember if that was during the big freeze or,
I can't remember.
Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah, that's our plan B is Starbucks internet if ours is not working. All right. Well, I think that's all we've got today. Anything else?
Nope. That's it for me.
Okay. Well, we will see you guys next week. And if you have any questions, let us know. Send us a text. The link will be in the show notes.
Y'all have a great week.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.